In the future, everything is paid for with time. There is no more money. In this new world, there are practically immortal people with a lot of time, while others work hard and beg for another day to live. What's up, Mr. Caveman here? And today I will recap the movie In Time. In the future, humans are genetically modified to stop aging at 25. The only caveat is that when humans reach 25, they will only have 1 year to live. A person's life is shown on his forearm with a stopwatch. So time is now the currency of the world. Everything revolves around it. The rich can basically live forever, while the poor live their lives paycheck to paycheck, literally just to survive. Will wakes up and sees that he has less than 24 hours left on his counter. He goes downstairs and greets his mother, Rachel, who is celebrating her 50th birthday. The celebration is interrupted when they start talking about finances. Rachel says she has 3 more days off and reminds Will of the bills and loans they need to pay. Will assures her that he will come up with the money somehow. Rachel said she would be away for 2 days working and paying off a loan. She tells Will that he has to meet her at a bus station so he can give her more time so her counter doesn't run out. She then hands over 30 minutes so he can afford a decent lunch. Will kisses her and says goodbye. On his way to work, Will encounters a child, Maya. She asks for a minute and Will happily gives her 5 minutes and the girl walks away smiling. He arrives at work and meets his friend Boral. Will works at a factory making time storage devices. After a day of work, he checks out and gets paid for the day. He realizes there is a lack of payment and demands more, but the distributor says the quota has increased and Will hasn't reached it. Later, Will meets some friends at a local bar and some men invite him to play, but he declines, but not after reminding one of the men that he owes Will an hour. He takes an hour and meets with Boral. Boral is drunk, pointing at someone who is buying drinks for everyone in the place. He says that man has more than a century of time. Will sees someone looking suspiciously at the time millionaire, Henry, and decides to inform him, saying that he is attracting a lot of attention and needs to be careful, but Henry ignores him. A group of men enter and everyone in the bar starts running. Boral tells Will that they are Minutemen, an organized gang that steals and extorts in exchange for time. Boral pulls Will away, but Will intends to stay and see what happens. He assures Boral that he won't do anything stupid and Boral leaves him. The gang leader, Fortis, tells Henry he wants his time and even offers Henry the chance to fight for it. Henry looks sick from drinking and goes to the bathroom. He vomits as one of Fortis's men escorts him away. Will suddenly appears and knocks the guy out and helps Henry escape. The two run outside and Fortis and his men go after them. They manage to escape after climbing a gate and hiding inside an abandoned building. The Minutemens arrive where the two are hiding, but don't find him and give up for now. One of the men tells Fortis that he recognized Will. Will and Henry talk and Henry reveals that he's 105 years old. He says his mind is tired and wishes for death, explaining his reckless behavior. Will is angry, considering he and his mother have to work multiple jobs just to survive. Henry then reveals the secrets of his horrible world. The rich increase the cost of living so that the poor continue to die, and in turn there is more time for the rich. The reality is that there is more than enough time for everyone in the world, something that is currently happening with the world economy. However, greed and the desire for immortality blind the rich and powerful. Henry asks Will what he would do if he had the same amount of time as him. Will responds that if he had that time, he wouldn't waste it like he does. Henry thinks about it and thanks Will for saving him, and the two sleep right there in the abandoned warehouse. The next morning, Henry decides to spend all his time with Will, who is still sleeping, leaving only less than 5 minutes for himself. Will wakes up and discovers he has more than a century to live. He looks for Henry and sees him sitting on top of a bridge where he appears to be ready to jump. As Henry's final seconds count down, he appears to be certain of what he has done. When the counter reaches 0, he dies and falls from the tower into the river. Later, Will goes after Boral and sees his wife Greta holding their newborn baby. Will asks about Boral and reveals the time he now has. Will talks about what happened last night and Boral asks what he plans to do with all that time. Now that he's learned the truth about the rich, Will intends to bring justice. Before leaving, Will presents Boral with some time. Meanwhile, Rachel pays off a 2-day loan and tries to catch the bus back home, but finds she can't afford the ticket because the prices have gone up. She pleads with the driver, but he and the passengers don't seem to care. The journey to the house takes 2 hours and she only has an hour and a half left. Desperate and without a choice, Rachel decides to try and run back. Will, who was waiting for her at the bus stop, finds it strange when he realizes that his mother was not on the bus. Will realizes that something may have happened and starts to make his way towards where his mother was coming from. A literal race against time begins, and with each step, death gets closer to Rachel. Finally, they see themselves on a street. They run as fast as they can, but when they almost reach Will's arms, death wins the race. Will doesn't believe what he sees and despairs, because with a few more seconds, he could give his mother a lifespan of several years. The next day, the timekeepers, a type of police, found Henry's body on the riverbank. Raymond, the senior timekeeper, and Jaeger, his companion, investigate the scene. When they are about to leave, Raymond sees a camera at the top top of the bridge and thinks he can get information about Henry's body. In the next scene, Will is sitting inside a car with a driver wearing a new suit from his inheritance. They leave the border that separates the different social classes in certain areas of the city. On their journey, they pass through several borders, paying a toll fee that increases one after another. The last frontier costs an incredible 1 full year. The driver then welcomes you to the town of New Greenwich. The driver asks Will what his intentions are in Greenwich, and Will responds that he wants to make these rich people suffer the consequences for the way they live. The city is totally different from what Will is used to. When he gets out of the car, he immediately starts running, still used to living with little time. He looks at his arm and remembers the fortune he has, then begins to act accordingly. However, with his strange behavior, he caught the attention of some people, including a mysterious woman who was getting into a limousine called Sylvia. Will checks into a hotel and asks for a suite. In his luxurious bedroom, Will wakes up and realizes he still has 105 years of time left. Even if he lies in the most comfortable bed in a room, with the most beautiful view of the city, and with all the time in the world, he cannot get over his mother's death. For the first time in his life, he tried gourmet food and drinks. He pays for the meal and gives the waitress a week's worth of tip. The girl then notices that Will doesn't act like everyone else in that environment, saying that he does everything a little too quickly. Will responds with a sarcastic air that doesn't end quickly on things that matter. Will plans to enter the casino, but first he needs to change his wardrobe. At the timekeeper's headquarters, they see Will on the surveillance footage. Yeager reports that a man crossed several borders into New Greenwich. They then receive more information about Will in the system, and Raymond claims he knows Will's father. Meanwhile, Will is at the casino and sits at a poker table. As the dealer deals the cards, Philippe, a billionaire, says he had never seen Will there before and asks some questions. With a few rounds of poker, Will reaches more than 2 centuries of time. In one play, Philippe bets 50 years. Will pays with complete confidence. Will's focus shifts away from the game when a lovely lady enters the room. It was Sylvia who had seen him earlier and sits next to Philippe. Philippe rolls up his sleeves, revealing he has almost 10 millennia of time. He then talks about the immeasurable gap between the poor and rich, justifying it as natural selection. He then ups the ante with 2 more centuries. Will pays the bet, leaving him with only 30 seconds on his arm. Everyone at the table is perplexed by Will's move, including Sylvia. Will wins and redeems his prize of 1 millennium with 3 seconds left before his counter reaches 0. This made an impression on Philippe's monotonous life. Will doesn't stop looking at Sylvia, and Philippe notices, saying that she is his daughter. The two introduce themselves, and Will is invited to a party. The next day, Will buys a new car with his poker winnings and uses it to drive to Philippe's mansion for the party. Once there, Philippe introduces his mother-in-law, wife, and daughter, all of whom look incredibly similar as people stop aging at 25, making it difficult to differentiate their age. Will seems out of place in the crowd, as he had never been part of that society of people before and didn't know anyone. Sylvia approaches and saves him from a lonely night. They learn more about each other, and the conversation takes them to the dance floor. She asks if he comes from the suburbs, but Will neither admits nor denies her claims. Sylvia opens up to him about her meaningless life and how the time she has chained her when it should guarantee her freedom. As they dance, Philippe and his wife watch from afar alongside their bodyguards. Will takes Sylvia outside to a nearby beach. Will encourages Sylvia to go into the sea with him, something they weren't in the habit of doing. They swim a little and talk, and an atmosphere develops between them. Suddenly, someone shouts from the shore, interrupting the romantic moment. They return to the party, and Philippe asks Will to join him for a game of poker. However, the timekeepers crash the party and confront Will. They take Will to an office, and Raymond introduces himself. He asks why he's in New Greenwich and how he has over a millennium of time. Will responds honestly and says that Henry gave it to him before taking his own life. Raymond doesn't seem to believe the explanation, confiscates his time, and arrests him. As he leaves, Will asks why he investigates Henry's death when murders happen in the suburbs every day. Raymond is surprised by his statement, as it reminds him of his father, who said the same thing. Will then attacks the timekeepers and rushes to hold Sylvia hostage. They enter through the kitchen, exit through the back, and Will escapes in his car, taking Sylvia with him. A car chase continues. Raymond crashes into Will's car, causing them to lose control. Will makes a maneuver worthy of Fast Furious and drives in reverse, avoiding cars. He loses the timekeepers and hides under a bridge. Will asks Sylvia for some time, but she refuses. The next morning, he drives along the highway and ends up having his tire punctured by a minute man's ambush. The car plummets off the highway. Fortis and his men approach the unconscious couple. Their leader drains Sylvia's time and they run away, leaving her with just 30 minutes to live. Will gives her a few minutes and they run off to get more time. With only 3 minutes left until Will's time is up, he arrives at the door of Boral's house and receives the news that Boral died drinking and wasting all the time that Will had given him. The two are desperate as there are only a few minutes left. Will notices Sylvia's earring, which seems to be worth a lot, and they rush to a pawn shop, where they get 48 hours of time. After that, the two hide when they hear the timekeeper's siren. The two walk through the city and Sylvia tells them about her family's business. Will asks how much they're worth, and she says it's a lot, to the point where she doesn't even care about values. Will calls Raymond and asks Philippe to transfer 1,000 years to the city where he lives in exchange for Sylvia. Raymond warns him that if he continues, he will end up dead, just like his father. Will says his dad died fighting a guy for time, but Raymond says Will's dad was doing something more dangerous. Night comes and Will takes Sylvia to his apartment. She asks about his family and Will talks about his his mother's recent passing. He remembers his father and says that he did a kind of arm wrestling betting on time. His father won a lot of time, but he was killed for the kindness of trying to help everyone. Talking, they discover that they are almost the same age and they seem to become more intimate. The other day, William observes whether Philippe had fulfilled his part of the bargain. They notice that the transfers to the city did not take place, and Sylvia is disappointed in her father. Despite the short time, Will wants to let Sylvia go even though his father doesn't keep the deal. He takes Sylvia to a phone booth, gives her a gun, and says goodbye, and she kisses him back. She calls her father and curses him for not delivering what Will wanted. While they talk, Will is behind her, sitting on the sidewalk, and seems to have given up on everything. Raymond arrives and takes him over. Sylvia turns around and sees Raymond surrendering Will, and without hesitation shoots Raymond. Will, instead of stealing Raymond's time, gives him the hardest hours to try to stay alive. Will takes Raymond's car and escapes with Sylvia. The two are standing on the side of the road, and Sylvia asks if he has any plans. She says they can't be driving around in a police car, so the two of them pretend to be police officers and confiscate a guy's car on the street. Later, the two stop to rest in the car and see news about them on the news. Will claims that she can still return to her world and her father, but Sylvia doesn't want to go back. The two kiss and they relax. In his office, Philippe talks to his partners and assures them that he did not pay the ransom. They doubt his ability to solve the problem, but Raymond enters the room before Philippe has a chance to explain himself. He tells Philippe that his daughter apparently doesn't want to be rescued. Philippe apologizes and regrets his daughter's stubbornness and says it could be Stockholm Syndrome. It develops from the victim's attempts to identify with her captor or to win the favor of the kidnapped Raymond, says he plans to arrest his daughter. Philippe tries to bribe him, but Raymond is completely uninterested and leaves. Meanwhile, Will teaches Sylvia how to shoot. They talk about Will's plan to give time to poorer people, and she says she will support him in getting the time he needs. The two steal a truck and enter a lone place, so the pair spend as much time as they can from the temporal storage devices. They go to the door of the place and tell people to come in and take as long as they can. Later that day, Will gives time to Greta, Maya, and even the timeline distributor who gives people time as charity. Fortis continues to rob people. He then sees a photo of Will and Sylvia on a billboard with a 10-year reward. Meanwhile, Philippe watches the news about what his daughter was doing with Will in the suburbs, giving time to the poor. Later that night, Raymond and the timekeepers surround a motel where the two are staying. The two notice the presence of the police and jump out the motel window to escape. Raymond chases them. They climb onto the rooftops and a shootout begins. The two manage to get on a bus, losing Raymond. Fortis are now also hunting them both. He interrogates a group of people threatening them. He kills a man, and then one of the people says he saw Sylvia and Will escape on the bus. At another motel, the two talk about the plan and what they are about to face. Sylvia felt more alive than ever facing this madness with Will. Suddenly, the bedroom door is kicked down by Fortis and his henchmen. Fortis challenges Will to the same game his father played before he died, the arm wrestling involving time. Will does his father's technique, and at the end of Fortis's counter, Will neutralizes his three henchmen and wins the game. The two go to the rooftops and observe that the city's prices continue to rise, extorting its people. Desperate Will says that the rich will only continue to increase the cost of living if they continue to steal and give to the people. He says just 1 million years will make a difference. Sylvia agrees and has a plan in her mind. The next day, Sylvia goes to her father's company and distracts his security guards while Will infiltrates their midst and captures Philippe. The two take him hostage. In his office, there is a safe that contains a device that is 1 million years old. Philippe tries to explain that society will destroy itself if this time falls into the wrong hands. Will angrily threatens him, but Sylvia calms him down. Will says that immortality is not worth the life of a single individual. The two leave. Meanwhile, the police set up a siege on the main road. They open fire on Will and Sylvia's car, but they miraculously are not hit. Raymond takes his car and they chase the two again. Will and Sylvia go to Will's town center, and Raymond catches up to them and crashes their car. Will gets out of the car and sees the girl Maya, asking her to distribute the time stored on the device. Raymond tries to surrender them both, but the crowd collapses with the time distribution and gets in Raymond's way. The two run away and Raymond goes after them once again. Finally, they are face to face in the middle of the road. Raymond admits that he is also from the suburbs, and as he learned to escape poverty, his eyes were also open to the harsh truth that the distance between rich and poor must be maintained. As they talk, Raymond realizes that his time is running out. He dies. Sylvia and Will are short on time. They run to Raymond's car. Will goes ahead, catches the time, and returns to save Sylvia in a scene of pure heroism. The people in the town are now crossing boundaries with the time Will and Sylvia gave them. The Minutesmans watch on TV about the fall of the social hierarchy. Sylvia and Will continue their routine, this time working their way into a huge time bank. If you lived in this world where everything is paid for with time, what would you do? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel by activating the bell to receive notification of upcoming videos. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.